Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Four Persons. Our guest tonight, for the third time, is Eric Hanson, and I don't see him yet on the switchboard. He should be here any moment. So, while we're waiting for Eric to show up, let's do a quick rehab. Uh, fact, there he is. Eric, how you doing?
I'm doing well, John. How are you? Can you hear
I was
me?
just talking about you. Your ears must have been ringing.
Yeah, they were.
So I think the best way to start is just a quick recap for anybody who may not be familiar. Mackenzie Shirilla was driving a vehicle in July of 2022 that struck a wall at approximately 100 miles an hour. The two passengers in the vehicle, Dominic Russo and Davion Flanagan, were killed on the impact. Mackenzie herself was airlifted to a local hospital, uh, clinging to life. She survived after multiple surgeries, and lo and behold, a few months later, the situation took a drastic turn. And why don't you pick it up from there?
So yeah, you're correct. Everything you just said was correct. Um, Several months into the investigation, November 4th to be specific, Mackenzie was arrested, and that was after an arrest warrant was obtained based upon the evidence that had been collected by the police regarding this case. And so she was arrested um, on November 4th during a traffic stop. Um, and she was taken to the local holding facility for processing. And that's where she remained until the bind over hearing and trial, where she was later convicted, and currently she is incarcerated at the Ohio Reformatory for Women. Um, so that's sort of a very short recap of what's going on with her and where she's currently located. Um, After she was convicted, the day she was convicted, that's where I became aware of her case. And uh, it was simply through a TikTok video. And it was written by somebody who obviously did not like her, because the caption to that TikTok video was something to the effect of this woman was just found guilty of killing her boyfriend and one other man and thought she could get away with it. You know,
So let me
go
jump
ahead.
in right there because you and I, for anybody that's watching this, needs to understand that Eric and I basically were pulled into this in pretty much the identical way. We heard about this story, came across it accidentally, and our first reaction was, "Wow, this person intentionally crashed his car into a wall and killed two people. You know, that's really horrible." And yet, as we dove into it and said, "Okay, well, you know, how did they determine that she did this on purpose?" And our ears were open. We were waiting to hear the case, but you and I both and this is independent of each other. This was before you and I had ever met or ever talked. We independently saw the evidence the same way, came to the same conclusion that wait a minute, something in here is not adding up. This does not. They have not proven a murder conviction here. So go ahead and pick it up there.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of how I approach it. Is like, wait a minute, okay, so I'm kind of curious, and so I started looking into the case, especially being someone so young, and her reaction at the trial and being found guilty of these heinous crimes.
Right.
Something really made me go, okay, something seems off here. I don't know what it is. It just seems off, and so I started finding out as much information as I could. Um, just her courtroom appearance, you know, a very young female appearing to be very petite. I was like, okay, she killed two men, thought she could get away with it. I wonder what kind of gun she used. That was my first question, was what kind of firearm was she using? Um, that's when I found out what her name was. Come to find out, she did not use a firearm at all. She was in a car and the car crashed. I did a search on Google for her name, and probably about the fourth or fifth listing down, it showed the actual video that had been released by the prosecutor's office showing the fatal crash. And I was like, wait a minute, this crash does not show what people think it shows. It shows a car crashing, yes. It shows the date, it shows the time, it shows the approximate weather conditions, which was dry, so it wasn't like wet weather, it wasn't snowing out, it wasn't sleeting, you know, nothing like that. The pavement was dry. And the approximate lighting conditions, which was 5:30 in the morning, or actually about 5:35, but give or take. And it was dark out. So when you look at the video and you look at the car crashing, you can't even see inside of the car. And the reason for that is because of two things. One, the tinted windows from the factory, the rear windows and the side windows have a slight tint to them, as well as there's polarization coating on there, and that's designed to protect from UV ultraviolet radiation from the sun. It's just a protective coating, but the problem with that is, to the human eye, it looks transparent, but to some of less advanced cameras, it appears like the window's painted completely black. You can't see in. So if I can't see into the car and I can't see even the basic pieces of equipment inside of that vehicle, like the rear seat headrests, how are we supposed to determine if this is intentional or not? Simply a car crashing does not prove intent. It has to be more than that. Because you can do a Google search. Anyone can do a Google search, and there are plenty of videos. And I used one in a previous conversation that we had, John, of a car crashing in Garfield, New Jersey, where it shows a car speeding up onto a sidewalk, almost hitting a pedestrian on that sidewalk and crashing into various items, including light pole, planters, things of that nature. Again, you could say, well, that was intentional. That driver intended to run that person over. Well, no, you can't make that determination. So what made them think that this was done on purpose? That was a question that automatically came to mind. And they said that they had a witness that said she had made a threat to crash this car 2 weeks earlier, and that there was a toxic relationship between Dominic and Mackenzie. And they played a video that was a phone call that Mackenzie and Dominic had. Going back to the witness who claims that he saw or heard this threat, there is a small problem with him, and that problem is he is not a very reliable witness. His name is Christopher Martin, and when you're going to rely on a person to provide you with testimony that is going to be crucial to your case, you really need to make sure that that person is above reproach. They have to.
Let me interrupt for a second here,
Yes.
because there's two ways that this witness was not credible.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make sure you cover both of them.
Yep.
Okay. And the first way is that he had somewhat of a checkered past that would definitely impugn his reliability, his honesty and his reliability. And second, there was a definite conflict of interest where his interest was definitely compromised or threatened. His well being was compromised or threatened if he didn't, as the saying goes, play ball. So
Correct.
go through those two scenarios one at a time, please.
Yes. So, starting off with his checkered past, in 2011, he was arrested for drug charges. The prosecutor's office, which is the same one that prosecuted Mackenzie, the Cuyahoga County prosecutor's office, and I hope I'm saying that name correctly, they gave him an opportunity, and that was an alternative drug treatment program, which he did complete. Now, if that was it, then fine. I wouldn't really be making a big deal about this. However, in 2017, he was arrested again, this time for carrying a handgun in a holster without a permit and for driving around town with that gun in the holster instead of being properly secured. Most states, Ohio included, have a firearm transportation requirement. And that way of transporting a firearm is it has to be unloaded. It has to be locked in some kind of a container, like a locking hard case or locking gun sleeve of some kind. And it has to be out of the control of the driver, meaning it has to be secured away from the driver so that the driver cannot easily reach it while the vehicle's in motion. That wasn't in the case here. It's literally on his hip in a holster. It was I believe, a Taurus 357 Magnum, which is a pretty powerful, handgun. And he is arrested for that. Now, because of his legal issues with continuances and things like that, his firearm charges move over into 2018. In 2018, he has 3 scheduled court appearances spread throughout a few months. And if anyone's ever been to court, they know that it's not something that is scheduled 2 days ahead of time. It is well in advance.
Yes.
It's communicated to your attorney. Your attorney will say, hey, Eric, your court appearance is going to be on Monday, and I'm just going to grab a Monday the 19th, 2026. Your time at the courthouse is going to be 1 p.m. So I better be there on that day at that time. Well, he did not show up for those court appointed, those scheduled appointments. So the presiding judge issued what is called a capias, or bench warrant, for his arrest for failure to appear. Now, I'm no legal scholar, but when a court judge says, I'm arresting you because you failed to show up for court, to me, that seems like it's a legal definition and example of saying, we don't trust you enough to show up on time, so we're going to make sure you do the next time you show up. That's why you're going to jail. So, and this is not once, it's not twice, it's at least 3 separate times. Not the most reliable person to put such credibility on. Eventually, he does plead guilty to those charges, and he is listed now as a felon. One of the legal representatives, who was one of his attorneys during this time frame, was Christine Russo, Dominic Russo's mother. Dominic Russo being Mackenzie's boyfriend.
Now, just in case any of you might have missed that, this is the mother of one of the deceased victims from the car crash.
Correct.
Who happened to be the boyfriend of Mackenzie. So this witness is represented by the mother of the deceased.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward to 2022, July 17th, 2022. This is where there's an altercation of some kind inside of Mackenzie's vehicle. Now, we know that this is a fact that did happen. What happened inside of the car is what is in dispute. From Mackenzie's point of view, and it is documented, and we have it documented in a previous episode where I actually pointed out the full text message, and everyone can go back to that episode and watch it if they wish. The first 3 text messages from Mackenzie are very hurried. They're very excited, meaning she's very amped up. It's sort of that adrenaline that kicks in. That's what is called fight, flight, or freeze response. You either fight, you either flight, run away, or you lock up and you freeze. So she posts 3 text messages to Christine Russo, Dominic's mom, basically begging for help, because in the text messages, it is alleged by Mackenzie that Dominic attempted to gain control of her vehicle and either spin it out or crash it. Now, the opposite to that is Christine Russo said, "Oh, that never happened. Mackenzie was the one that was out of control. Dominic was the calm one." But we only hear that after the fact. We only hear that after the fatal car crash, when she is interviewed by police as part of their crash investigation. There's no text messages. There's no video inside the car. Is it a he said, she said type situation? Yes, technically it is. But when you break down the text messages, just from Mackenzie's text messages, first of all, she is using shorthand. She is using there are spelling errors indicating that it's literally going brain, thumb, phone, out. There's literally no time for spelling corrections, indicating it's a hurried state of mind. However, the first text message from Dominic to Mackenzie is, "I'm sorry." Okay, why is he apologizing? Is he apologizing for something stupid, like he changed the radio station? Probably not, especially when you look at the rest of the text message exchange between him and Mackenzie, where they're literally talking about the potential crashing of a car, how Mackenzie is upset that she would be injured and is actually terrified of being injured in a car crash, that Dominic doesn't seem to be making a big deal about it and saying, "Well, I would die too." And it doesn't
So
make any sense.
let me interject here.
Yes.
So we have forensic evidence here. Forensic evidence here that the conflict on the 17th of July, 2022, that we have forensic evidence that would support that Dominic Russo was the aggressor in that conflict.
Yes.
And yet we have this witness who is saying just the opposite. He's saying
Correct.
that Mackenzie was the aggressor. Mackenzie was threatening to crash the vehicle. Now, does he produce any type of corroboration, maybe another witness or any kind of anything in writing or any kind of evidence whatsoever?
So the answer to that question is no. There is no independent witnesses that he is able to give names to the police so that these independent witnesses can be interviewed by police. He does not offer audio recording. He does not offer video and audio recording of what he claims he observed.
Right. And now you have a witness that has a checkered past, as we discussed, and he's now making claims with no corroboration, and we have direct evidence that contradicts the claims that he's making. And then we
Correct.
have evidence that this person could possibly be compromised because at the time that he's making these claims, who is he actually living with?
So he is living and residing. Living and residing is the same thing now I think about it. He is living at the same house under Christine Russo's home, rooftop. So he is literally living in the same house as she, as her. And the reason why he is involved and as a witness is because um, Christine Russo was sick. Um, that can be confirmed through hospital records and things like that. I'm not going to bring that up. Um, but she was not able to go and get Dominic, so she asked Christopher Martin to please go get Dominic. So Christopher Martin does. He goes and picks up Dominic on the side of the freeway. Um, and that's when he supposedly witnesses this exchange between Mackenzie and Dominic. Um, that's sort of, it's like, you don't offer any additional proof. You report this information to the police in November 1st. 3 months have passed since the crash. So it's like, what were you doing for those 3 months? Because he lived, I'm not sure what his current living situation is right now, but when he, at the time of the crash and at the time of the altercation, he was living in the Russo household. When he interviewed with the police, he had access to Christine Russo, and it is reasonable to believe that she told him exactly what she told the police. So he would have some foreknowledge on that. Additionally, there is another son, and that's Angelo Russo, Christine Russo's other son, Dominic's brother. Again, reasonable that Angelo would have told Mr. Martin what he said to the police. Additionally, he had access to the text messages between Mackenzie and Christine, the text message between Mackenzie and Dominic, and there was a couple of text messages between Mackenzie and Angelo. Real basic, nothing, even remotely incriminating. It was more of favors like, can you please take down the photographs of me and Dominic and please put it in his casket during his funeral, that type of thing. But he would have access to all of these pieces of information. And so when he goes to the police department to give this statement that is supposed to be so earth shattering in this case, he pretty much has all the pieces necessary to come up with, I don't want to use the term lie, but at least enough information to give the impression that it was Mackenzie's fault. Um, when he does go to the police department, Christine Russo accompanies him. She, from my understanding, stays out in the waiting room while Mr. Martin is inside of the interview room. But I find it extremely odd that Christine Russo, who wore three different hats really in this case, she wore the hat of a grieving mother, which is understandable. She wore the hat of a witness, and she also wore the hat of that of an attorney. So it's sort of like, okay, what role is she playing and at what time? Is she there to be the legal representative for Mr. Martin because he's giving this statement? Is she there to be a supporter? Is she there, why is she there? It seems a bit odd. Fortunately, they did not allow her to go into the room with Mr. Martin. So I do give the police credit on that part. But there were many things other than Mr. Martin's questionable and checkered background. Now, when you're like, when I bring this up to other people, they ask, well, what incentive or motive would he have to lie? Well, in Ohio and in many other states, if you are a convicted felon, like Mr. Martin is, trying to obtain stable housing is difficult. Landlords can outright discriminate against you simply for having a felony record. It happens a lot. And it's one of those few things that is not a protected status, unlike other protective statuses like, race or sexual orientation, that type of thing. So his motive is, it's very reasonable to say his motive would be to maintain my housing, because if he does not go along with the play ball, as you said, I believe, whether it's real, whether, meaning it was stated, or if it was implied, what are the alternatives? Well, he could find himself without housing. As a convicted felon, it's going to be difficult for him to find housing. So what are going to be his alternatives? Well, one, local shelter. Probably not the best situation, but they do exist. Potentially living on the streets. Again, another very unattractive situation to be in. So,
the thing is, though, Eric, we don't really, if you're looking at this case objectively, the defense doesn't have to prove any of this.
correct.
All the defense has to prove is that he is a questionable witness, that there is potential conflict of interest,
Mm-hmm.
that he's presenting evidence with no corroboration of any kind, whether in the part of another witness or in the part of any physical evidence to support it, like pictures or text messages, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side, the evidence that is contradicting what Christopher Martin is saying is physical. We do have physical, tangible, readable evidence that was directly taken from the cell phones.
Correct.
Eric, if you're a judge in this particular situation, the ruling on here is a slam dunk on which evidence you're admitting and which evidence you're not admitting. Am I right? Is it that clear cut?
To me, it is, yes, because one is you have physical, tangible evidence with dates and timestamps, and those are the text messages.
It's empirical evidence.
Yep. And then you have another person with an extremely questionable background who, by the court and prosecution's own admission, several years previously was completely, utterly unreliable and untrustworthy. So now we're going to trust him to be our star witness? That seems a bit odd. It seems like he told them exactly what they wanted to hear. Now, there's a thing called corroborating evidence. If he came in and gave that information and then provided, if you don't believe me, here's video that proves what I'm saying. Okay, fine. Then we're not actually relying too much on him and his statement. We're actually going to rely on that video, but he doesn't bring anything like that. So now we're relying on someone with a very questionable background, and it does not make any sense to me.
And here's the other thing, Eric, that an angle that I don't know, maybe you haven't even looked at this angle, is that Strongsville's not that large of a town, okay? And a small town, word gets around, okay? So if this altercation happened on July 17, and he comes forward with this information on November 4, you said?
November 1st.
November 1, okay.
Yep. And with that, November 1st, he comes in and he gives the statement. And based upon that statement, that's when prosecutors move forward to obtaining the arrest warrant, which they served on November 4th.
Right. So we're to believe that between July 17 and November 1, Christopher Martin didn't talk to anybody else and say, well, I was there when Mackenzie said blah, 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 and she threatened she was going to crash the car. And you would have had a line of other witnesses at least corroborating that, yeah, Christopher Martin told me the same thing, that that he showed me the text
You,
messages, whatever, but you don't have any of that, do you?
no, you would think that would be the situation of 3 months had passed, you know, people talking left and right about this case. And from my understanding with people who live in the area, not any family members themselves from any of the parties involved, but people who live in that area, this case has really torn the city apart, where one side is for Mackenzie, the other side is against her.
Mhm.
And this is one of those things where with Mr. Martin and what he brings to the table or what he doesn't bring to the table is certainly questionable. Then there's also the questions and tactics on the investigating officer and what he did or should have done that also raises red flags as well. Um, so if I could touch on that, I'd appreciate it. Um, so one of the things that was mentioned, it goes back to the initial report, the motor vehicle report on this case, and it kind of goes back to just the basic positioning of how Mackenzie was found inside of the car. And 1 second here, I'm pulling up a file so I can show everybody. Um, and this is a motor vehicle accident report, complete with narrative. One second here. All right. Now, if I can just share my screen here. Let's see.
Is it allowing you to?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's processing. Okay.
Okay. What are we looking at?
So I was going to go to City of Strongsville Incident Officer Offense Report. So this is written by Officer Galassi. And I'm getting to the narrative part here. This is the part that made me start questioning on what was going on. When I ran, it's going to be starting off in the second paragraph here. When I ran to the scene, I observed a black Toyota Camry bearing Ohio plate with severe front end damage, which appeared to be severed in half from the front end down the middle of the body of the car. Well, slight correction, it wasn't severed in half. It was severe front end damage up to the firewall, but it didn't split the car in half. And you can see that in body camera still images from the scene.
Yeah, so it was basically the shell was split, but not the chassis, not the car
Correct.
itself.
Correct. Um, Running up to the car, I observed a full front and side airbag deployment. I looked inside the still intact driver's side window and I saw a young white female's body, which did not appear to be moving or breathing. All we could see was the lower torso of her body and part of her leg. She appeared to be folded over and pinned under the passenger side underneath the passenger dashboard, which had caved in on top of her. I notified dispatch that the vehicle was occupied. I then ran around to the other side to check if there were any other passengers. Um, Now, moving down a little bit further, down to the very bottom of the page, paragraph, it says, "We were able to cut away the airbags and get to the female driver. The driver was alive and appeared to be breathing, but her upper body was still pinned underneath the passenger dashboard, which collapsed on top of her. We were able to make out sounds of her mumbling. I immediately notified dispatch that our driver was breathing and to ask SFD, or Strongsville Fire Department, to step it up. I also advised them that we needed full extraction on all 3 occupants of our vehicle." Now, what that tells me is that Mackenzie is folded over, or is in their lingo, the center console of her car. And you should have had this prepared a little bit sooner. My apologies. And share screen.
You mean to add it to the stage?
Yes, please.
Oh, I have to remove the other one. Okay. All right.
So this is a picture of a 2018 Toyota Camry from U.S. News and World Report. So something that very reputable site. So this is what essentially is inside of Mackenzie's damaged vehicle as we speak. So here's the center console. Here's a gear shift lever. It's on the center console. Steering wheel, passenger side. She was folded over this. So her upper body was underneath this part. And when you think about this car crash, and you can, the viewers can go back to the previous episode and see the video of the car crashing, or you can actually just Google it too yourselves. Ask yourself this question: at what point in time is there significant damage done to the vehicle that would push this portion of the car down on top of someone? Is it going through the sign that was on the lawn? No. That thing is just made out of simple thin sheet aluminum and plastic. It would have to happen when the vehicle impacted with the corner of the building. So if she is trapped under here, and the dashboard is the only time it receives enough force to push something down, is when it impacts with the building.
She would have to be in that location before the impact.
Correct. She would have to be on her side. And if we think of basic physics, if we remember basic physics from high school, anything in motion stays in motion and at the same speed unless acted upon by another force. So when the car is rapidly slowing down because of the impact, she's still flying forward at the same rate as the car was going. So if you take a look at how she appears at the time of the crash, she's a very petite girl. In fact, she was noted as being under or being malnourished, and if I remember right, in the report, indicating that she had essentially skin and bones. Now, for guys like me who have more muscle mass and a little extra body fat here and there, the energy from a crash gets absorbed by those tissues. Well, she has none of that. So all the energy goes directly into her skeletal structure. If she's laying on her side and she slides forward, Where about in on her body would this be if you were to take a guess? It would probably be
More in the
mid.
rib cage.
Hmm?
More in the rib cage area.
Exactly.
Yep.
And that's the exact injuries that she sustained in the crash. She had 3 broken ribs on her right side, number 8, number 9, and number 10. She also had a lacerated liver. Well, if that not, and as you can see, that gear shift lever, that's a pretty hefty piece of equipment right there. That's going to cause some injuries. And if she's underneath this and she can't be just picked up by police and moved out, they had to use mechanical tools. That means she was on her side at the time of the crash. That's the only way I can think of it. Because if she was sitting upright at the time of the crash, the airbag from the steering wheel certainly would have absorbed the impact. The seatbelt would have kept her upright. And if she passed out after the crash, going like, "Oh, I can't believe I survived that," and passed out, well, she's going to end up laying on top of Dominic, who is sitting here.
Even if she was knocked out by the impact and fell over, she still wouldn't be pinned underneath the dashboard.
Correct.
Yeah. So the only way that she's pinned underneath the dashboard is if she was laying down prior to impact. I mean, it's cut and dry.
Mm-hmm.
It's cut and dry. So now the question is, why was she in that position?
Yeah, and so that is where uh, the issue of a medical emergency comes into play. Could this have been a medical emergency, and if so, how? Well, she was diagnosed well before she started driving with I think around age 14, 15, maybe even earlier, with a condition called POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which is a neurological condition that causes your heart rate to speed up at random times,
Right.
um, causing tachycardia, which is a racing of the heartbeat of well over 100 beats, maybe 120. I have to look at the nomenclature again, the information again, but it creates a very rapid heartbeat. Some people can have heartbeats that go up to 150 or 160 beats per minute, which is fine if you're running like a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're sitting in a car or walking up a set of stairs or just sitting, on the couch watching TV, if you suddenly experience that, that's a medical condition. That's both neurological and cardiac issue. Um, some people have POTS that are so bad that it does cause seizure-like activity. And some of these folks are either confined to a wheelchair or have to use mobility aids. Some folks actually also have service animals that alert them.
Now, Eric, in this type of a situation where you have a severe seizure or episode such as that, it's going to have a dramatic negative effect on a person's blood oxygen saturation level. Am I correct?
Yes, you are correct.
And
Especially
and that
when
is exactly what we find when she was extracted from the vehicle, right?
correct. Her blood pressure was very, very high. I don't have the stats right in front of me, but they were higher than normal, much higher than normal. Her blood pulse oxygen level, her oxygen saturation level in her blood was at 82%.
Which
Now,
is just
that
frighteningly low.
it is. And for those people who don't know what that means, anything um, normal breathing that you are doing at your computer or at work, you're not feeling lightheaded, you're just taking in oxygen,
I'm
exhaling like normal.
I'm sorry, you broke up there.
Oh,
We had a little
sorry.
bit of break up there, and what you're saying here is so important. Oh, no, it's not you. It's the signal just broke up for a minute. But what you're saying is so important. Please repeat it.
Yep. So normal oxygen levels for people sitting at their desk or on the couch, not feeling lightheaded, is going to be anywhere between, at the lowest, 96%, but it should be right around 98 to 99, maybe even 100% oxygen intake.
And she's at 82.
She's at 82. 80, anything below 85 is considered basically get your butt to a hospital now type urgency.
Yeah, life-threatening.
When it gets to 80% or lower, creates a problem called hypoxia. Hypoxia is just a really fancy word for oxygen starvation of the body. So your organs are starving for oxygen. So things can start shutting down. Kidneys, liver, other body organs can start shutting down due to lack of oxygen. When it's at 82%, that's borderline. But here's the problem with pulse oximeters, and I use them very frequently at work as a first aid CPR AED instructor and a member of our department's emergency response team. These devices have a plus or minus error reading of about 2%. So if you take that factor into consideration, her oxygen level could have been as low as 80% or as high as 84%. 84 is a little bit better, but it's still dangerous. Now, by the time she gets to the hospital, she's improved. Why? Because when she's on that transport helicopter, they have started supplemental oxygen on her. That's no doubt. That's an automatic given. Whether it was face mask or nasal tube, that I don't know. Is probably an oxygen mask because that's easier to change out and use. But when you start introducing pure oxygen, it's going to raise that O2 level in the blood. Thus, you're going to start feeling better by the time you get to the hospital. So by the time the doctor who testified at her trial said, "Oh yeah, when I got to see her roughly 2 hours after the crash, she was alert and she was talking, and well, of course she was. Oxygen had been introduced. It's sort of like, okay, take a goldfish, take it out of the little bowl of water, hold it in your hand. He's gasping for oxygen. Okay, you put him back into the water. Yeah, his vital signs have improved. Why? Because you gave him oxygen. So
Right.
That's a real basic premise, but I think it gets the point across. Without oxygen, what happens? We die.
Let's quickly summarize here.
Yes.
We have someone who has been in a car crash. There are two fatalities.
Mm-hmm.
The person is pinned underneath the passenger side dashboard, which indicates that she was in a prone position prior to impact. The fact that her ribs are broken from the gear shift supports that.
Mm-hmm.
She had a dramatically accelerated blood pressure level, but she had a dramatically diminished blood oxygen saturation level.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All of these three things point strongly to a possible medical episode, and they fit the characterization, they fit the profile, if you will, of a condition that she had been positively diagnosed with.
Correct.
So you have a previous diagnosis, and these are symptoms that could result from that diagnosis, from a medical episode caused by the diagnosis. If you are sitting on a jury, at a minimum, there's doubt here.
Mm-hmm.
There's doubt here.
Yes.
Now, from a legal perspective, the entire case for the prosecution hinges on one very questionable witness, the testimony of one very questionable witness, and the physical, medical, forensic evidence all points in a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
So explain to me how we get a murder conviction out of this. How does this happen?
Overzealous, I think, is. I feel that some of the data that was collected was blatantly ignored, which unfortunately is. It's unfortunate that it happened. I think it's actually a violation of Brady versus Maryland, in which prosecutors and police have a moral and legal responsibility to look for evidence in a impartial manner, as well as if there's evidence that could lead to exoneration, that has to be taken into consideration as just as much as evidence that would lead to the belief of a wrongdoing. There's one of the pieces of information that was obtained by the police is our two potential destinations for Mackenzie and Dominic. The first one, and I'll just pull it up here on the screen if I can.
Yeah, we touched on this in the previous episode that
Yep.
the road that she was traveling was perfectly consistent with either of the two possible destinations she was heading to.
Yep.
In either case, the road that she was traveling was perfectly consistent with that. And second of all, it was perfectly consistent with a route that Christine Russo knew that Mackenzie was familiar with and had taken often.
Yep.
So that entire part of the case was just a complete ruse.
Yep. So right here, hopefully you can see my screen here.
Okay.
So this is an interview with Kelly Verrera on. This interview was on August 9th. So this is a follow-up interview to the written statement that she provided police on the 1st. So this is a follow-up. She provided this address, 22628 Westwood Drive, for Mark. Now, when I took that address from the starting point to that address, I was given three different route options. One of the routes described and was listed as a priority because it had less turns or whatever, is identical to the route that they drove that morning. It's the same route that Mackenzie drove. It literally told me to take the same route. And I've never been to Strongsville. I don't, I know where it is on a map, but I've never been there personally.
When you look at the map, it's obvious that
yes,
if you or I lived in that town, this is the route we would take. It cuts right through the middle of the town rather than going all the way around. If you can cut through the center of a circle rather than going all the way around the circle. I live in the Washington, D.C. area.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the Beltway around the Washington, D.C. area is like almost 70 miles, 66 miles. Okay. Well, if I can get from one town to another by taking an exit and then going, one of the cross routes, rather than go all the way around the Beltway, I
Right.
mean, it just doesn't even make any sense. So to say that I'm going to go west for 66 miles to get to a destination that's 1 mile east from where I'm at is just nonsense. I'm going to take the the shortest rate, the most direct route.
Mm-hmm.
Eric, I want to kind of move things along here
Yes.
because I mean we've already been over this,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to be clear that you and I, neither one of us are soft on crime.
Mm-hmm.
We don't believe in that. We believe that if we believed and the prosecution proved that Mackenzie Shirilla killed these two young men,
Mm-hmm.
neither you or I would have any problem with her being sent away for life. We wouldn't have any issues with that. Okay.
No.
Our issue is not on the nature of the crime. It or the nature of the tragedy. Two young men were tragically killed here, and that's
Mm-hmm.
a horrible, terrible thing. And our hearts go out for the families. The problem that we have here is that you prosecuted someone on a double murder charge, found that person guilty on a double murder charge, and the evidence isn't there to support it. Now, the thing that really bothered me the most about this case, and I was just thinking about this earlier today, the thing that I could not figure out is why did they decide to go with a bench trial rather than a jury trial?
That that's still a question that I can't answer.
And
I
the
think they
only reason that I've been able to come up with, the only thing that I've been able to come up with, because to me, and tell me if you think I'm wrong here, if this trial goes to a jury where 12 people have to vote unanimously to convict,
Mhm.
there is no chance that Mackenzie Shirilla is convicted. There is no chance you're going to find 12 people that are going to convict based on the evidence presented here.
Mhm.
Now, the only reason that I can think of as to why they would have decided to go to a bench trial rather than a jury trial, and you just hear me out here and tell me if this makes any sense at all, is that they believed the case was such an absolute slam dunk that the prosecution literally had nothing, which they did literally have nothing, and that a bench trial would be faster. It would be her quicker path to freedom. Now, that's the only logical way to go for a bench trial rather than a jury trial. And I'm sure if they had it to do all over again, that's a
Mhm.
mistake that they would change. But other than that, can you come up with any logical reason why they would have gone with a bench trial here?
Uh, your explanation sounds pretty accurate to how I think it would have occurred. However, um, I also think it was because of maybe they were putting in a little bit too much faith into the attorney that represented Mackenzie at trial. I know at multiple stages, Mackenzie herself was asked, um, do you still want to have your current attorney representing you? And the more I think about it, I wonder if that was supposed to be a clue by the judge to Mackenzie saying, your attorney is not doing that good of a job. Say something. But at the same time, it's possible that fear may have said, yeah, he's representing me, because of this overwhelming situation. I mean, she's no legal scholar, neither am I. Um, and it may have been some rudimentary fear of if I say my attorney is doing a horrible job representing me and he's kicked off the case, I now have to represent myself. How am I going to do that? That that is the only thing I could think of. And now she may
And
have.
she was 17 years old, impressionable teenager,
Mhm,
and her attorney is probably reassuring her, you have to trust me. If you
right,
trust me, we're going to win this thing, but you have to trust me. You have to trust me. And in that situation, what choice does she have but to trust him?
right.
Now,
And this is part of
fast
the.
forwarding past all of that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yep. And that's part of the issue is that Mackenzie. We spoke about the text messages which we've displayed. We've talked about all of this that we, the routes and the statements by potential witnesses like Christine Russo, um, and the attorney Mackenzie actually wanted to have the text messages entered into evidence at
And
trial,
I can't imagine why they wouldn't be.
but they weren't. The trial attorney that was
That's what
representing
I'm
her
saying.
never. Yeah,
I can't imagine why that happened, why that evidence was not introduced.
it it made no
Astounding.
sense to me. And I'm like, you have to do more than just show up at court as an attorney with a nice suit on and say
Fight
objection
for
or
your
two.
client.
Yes,
Yeah.
you know it, and it's within reason. Now, if she said, "Yeah, I blacked out because I saw a UFO and I crashed because of a UFO," yeah, then we know that that's complete utter nonsense. But here we have documentation from medical staff, from text messages about the alleged threat, which we don't even know, and I firmly don't believe it even happened. Um, but then you also have the actions of like the police, for example. This is one thing I wanted to bring up too, real quick, and that was on March 15th, 2023. The judge at the bind over hearing or probable cause hearing, because Mackenzie was a juvenile at the time of this alleged crime, they have to hold what is called a bind over hearing or probable cause hearing, in which the juvenile court will weigh the evidence presented at that time and say, yes, there is enough evidence to proceed to adult court and transfer the juvenile to adult court. Or they'll say, no, you don't have enough evidence for these charges, whatever charges they may be. Um, on March 15th, the judge, Jennifer O'Malley, said there was not enough probable cause. The state failed to provide probable cause for aggravated murder charges. So those charges were dismissed. But she did allow the other charges to proceed, which included aggravated assault, assault with a deadly weapon, I believe it was one of the charges, um, possession of drug, possession of criminal tools, which is a drug scale, that type of thing. She did allow those to go forward, which is how Mackenzie got transferred over to adult court. 5 days later, on March 20th, Detective Hazow contacted the um, medical examiner's office, and I'm pulling up the supplemental report right now so everyone can see it. So it says on March 20th, 2023, at approximately 11:30 hours, I requested the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's Office to review the manner of death in the above referenced case in light of new evidence. My question is, what new evidence occurred between March 15th and March 20th? Probably not a whole lot. And in the statement here, it says on Wednesday, April 12th, at approximately 11:37 hours, I received a phone call from Dr. Fellow, a forensic pathologist at CCME, informing him that a secondary review, the manner of Davian and Flanagan and Dominic Russo's deaths was changed from accidental to homicide. Now, people may look at this and say, okay, they change it to homicide. However, and let me share another image here. And it's now up. Can you see it, John?
I have to remove the other.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. So section 313.19, coroner's verdict for the legally accepted cause of death. Let's just go through this real quick. The cause of death and the manner and mode in which the death occurred, as delivered by the coroner and incorporated in the coroner's verdict and in the death certificate filed with the Division of Vital Statistics, shall be the legally accepted manner and mode in which the death occurred, and the legally accepted cause of death, unless the Court of Common Pleas in which the county in which the death occurred, after a hearing, directs the coroner to change his decision to the cause and manner and mode of death. So when we compare that to the report and request,
That didn't happen here at all.
correct, they sidestepped the courts. Detective Hazow willingly, deliberately sidestepped the court and said, hey, coroner, can you change the cause of death and review it?
Fix the document for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's incredible. That's mind-boggling.
That is, to me, misconduct.
Yeah.
Blatant misconduct
Yeah.
by a police officer. That is unacceptable.
He's tampering in the case. Absolutely.
Now, I know from other documentation, the prosecutor has tried to defend this by saying, well, the medical examiner has the legal right to change the cause of death because, and they cite a case where a person had died. The cause of death was listed as undetermined or unknown. I think it was undetermined and then it was later modified to say homicide. Well, that's a completely separate issue. Undetermined is a legal definition of I have no idea how this
I'm
person
still
died.
investigating. Yeah.
We're still trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
Think of, I'll just use a basic example. Think of a housing development going into an area that was undeveloped. During the housing development building, they find skeletal remains, but they don't find everything of the skeletal remains. They find part of the skeleton, but pieces are missing, including the skull.
And later they find a skull with a bullet hole in it.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah. Well, now we can modify it and go from undetermined
to murder.
Yeah. That makes sense. But here, for over 5 or 6 months, I believe it was, Dominic and Davian were listed as accident, which does make sense concerning neither one of them were wearing their seatbelts in the car. But now here we're trying to sort of stack the deck against Mackenzie. No, you sidestepped the coroner. Now, if the coroner had said, we'd love to, but we need an order from the court, then fine. I wouldn't be complaining about this.
Or if the coroner had, of their own volition, said, well, you know what, we've now reviewed the evidence and now we've changed our mind. It wasn't an accident, it was a homicide. If they had come to that conclusion by themselves, but with the police officer putting this pressure on them to change
prompting them.
Yeah.
So would they, the way I look at it is, would they have done anything if they were not prompted to do so? No, they wouldn't have, because they would consider the case closed because they had already made a ruling. Here they were prompted by the police to amend their own records, and they did it, and it was in direct violation of this law.
This is this is uh, an example of planting evidence, if you will. This is like putting the gun in the victim's hand and saying he was the shooter. You know,
Right.
the same kind of thing. So, Eric, I want to fast forward now.
Yes.
I know we're short on time.
Yep.
So we brought everybody up to speed about what transpired and how we got to where we are now. So now the main reason why I brought you on tonight is apparently something has changed.
So
and there's hope for Team Mackenzie. Explain what has changed.
yes, so her legal representatives, they filed a what is called a post conviction relief appeal, in which documentation is submitted to be reviewed as if it was submitted at trial. Those items that were include the text messages that we talked about. It also includes a affidavit by a board certified neurologist, Dr. Chamal, I believe is his name. And I think we actually reviewed that in a previous episode, and people can go back and review that. Along with additional information, I think including the map routes and things like that. And an affidavit from Allison Gerlow, I think is how you pronounce her name, who is the owner of Allison Superfoods, which was the second destinational possibility, which also uses the same directions as Mark's address that I pointed out earlier. So the first appeal was automatically denied after review by the appeals court. That was actually expected, because at the first appeal, all they are looking for is the process. Was all the processes followed? Do they think, in their opinion, Mackenzie was properly represented, etc.? They said conviction upheld. So the next appeal was to the Supreme Court, but also at the same time, the post-conviction relief was filed. The Supreme Court decided to not hear the appeal, and so it went back to the lower court. And then the day after, Judge Russo said, "You submitted the paperwork too late, so therefore I'm not even going to look at it, and case closed." Well, now they have filed an appeal to that decision, saying, no, we actually got the paperwork and the post-conviction relief information to you on time within the appropriate schedule. And now the appeals court will be hearing that here in a few weeks. So there'll be oral arguments on that step of, did you or did you not get the post-conviction relief paperwork into the court in the allotted time. So that's where we're at right now. So that should be as easy as looking at a calendar and how much time from conviction day to, that type of thing. And that's where we, on the pro Mackenzie side of things, have our fingers crossed that the appropriate decision is made, and the appropriate steps, which is hopefully either the post-conviction relief is considered, or even they just say, all right, heck with it, we're going to just go ahead and do a whole new trial with a jury, which is something I would prefer to see myself. But if it involves a post-conviction relief, and they look at the post-conviction relief and say, okay, yeah, there's more than sufficient amount of paperwork and documentation here from a medical standpoint that would allow for reasonable defense under the Layman v. Hanem rule, which is the sudden medical emergency doctrine for driving a motor vehicle, in which basically you have to prove that the condition was sudden and unexpected, which in this case it would be. An example where it wouldn't be is if you take medication that would knock you out and you decide to go drive and go get a pizza and you fall unconscious. That type of thing. This was sudden and unexpected. There's no threat that we are aware of, except from the one person with very questionable background. And that's all they have. Yeah, they do have a series of angry text messages. Yes, there is a recorded phone call where Mackenzie was very upset. But if you also step into her mind for a moment, put yourself in her shoes, if I'm breaking up with my boyfriend and I live at the house.
Murder is a high bar to clear. I mean, I've been very upset at people. I've been angry at people. Okay. Mm-hmm. But being angry at somebody and murdering them, that's a big step.
Oh, okay? It's a very big step. Yes.
And to me, for murder, you have to have three things under the legal definition of murder. You have to have motive, intent, opportunity.
Right.
Okay. And they basically made up all three in this case. Mm-hmm. All three are fabricated.
Right. And one of the things that they said that why she did this is that she was afraid, or Dominic was going to break up with her. Well, actually, no, because in the text messages that we reviewed earlier, it showed Mackenzie and Dominic discussing, and Mackenzie said, "That's it. I can't deal with you anymore. So we're done."
She was going to break their.
She was going to break up with them, or at least that's based on the text messages that we saw. Now, being teenagers, we have a tendency to, pivot on one point to another, and apparently at one point they did make up. But
Eric, I wouldn't even. I don't even buy that argument, because here's the deal. It is, again, we talk about leaps here. Yes. It is a big leap from, even if you prove that Mackenzie was afraid of the breakup.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It is a big leap to go from, I'm afraid you're going to break up with me, to, I'm afraid you're going to break up with me, so I'm going to kill you.
Right.
You have to have a little bit more than your own imagination to get to that kind of a jump. And there's absolutely nothing that they have that supports that her mind was going in that direction at all.
And testimony, or I don't want to say testimony, but statements to police, we know that this was an on-again, off-again relationship that they had over several years.
They were teenagers. That's what you would expect.
Yes. Like, okay, you broke up 2 years earlier, then you got back together, you broke up again, and now you're breaking up a third time, and now suddenly you want to kill? No, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
It's a very, like I said, a very strange case. I know that there are a lot of anti-Mackenzie folks out there. There are some new pages and Facebook pages that are out there that are anti-Mackenzie, and they're constantly reading about text messages that were obtained from, and I have to laugh at them because they're saying, "See, she's a narcissist." I'm like, yeah, you're also reading a text message from when she was 15 years old. That has no bearing on this case.
Okay. She might be a narcissist. Okay. I don't know Mackenzie Shirilla.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't know her. And none of this is based on what I know or think of Mackenzie Shirilla. I don't know anything about her. For all I know, she might have been the biggest spoiled brat that ever set foot into a high school. I have no way of knowing that one way or the other. That doesn't make her a murderer.
Right.
And I what's very scary here, Eric, is that people are missing the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
When we allow someone, anyone, to be sent away to prison for life on a murder charge on evidence this week, that puts all of us in danger.
It does.
Puts the
And
rights of all of us in danger. We have to insist on that high bar that our founding fathers insisted on, and that is innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. They
mhm,
don't come close to reasonable doubt here. They don't
correct.
come close to it.
And what is proof beyond a reasonable doubt? Some people, if we take it a scale of 1 to 100%, 1% to 100%, some people think beyond a reasonable doubt is 50.1% and guilty, 49.9% not guilty. No, that's not beyond reasonable doubt. Beyond a reasonable doubt is 99.9% for sure guilty. And when you have so many things in this case where you have, yeah, there is a possibility their theory might be correct, but when you have another theory that is just as equal, then you haven't met that threshold.
You cannot send someone to prison for life on maybe.
Correct. Exactly.
You
That
cannot
is.
send someone to prison for life on maybe. Now, we said before, and we will repeat again, if this was a case where, I mean, we have a letter stating, I'm going to crash the car and I'm going to kill Dominic and Davion. And we have, you know, we can see inside the car and we can see her deliberately drive the. We have proof, okay?
Mhm.
Eric and I are going to be the first in line saying, hey, we believe in justice in this case. She needs to be sent away to prison for the rest
Yep.
of her life.
Mhm.
I mean, that's absolutely where we are here. But they don't come close to reasonable doubt. And I started this when I first got involved with this. My position was, okay, I'm not sure she's innocent, but I definitely don't believe the prosecution proved their case. As the evidence has come more and more and more and more and more, this looks like a tragic accident to me.
Mhm.
This looks like a medical emergency and a tragic accident. And I want to answer one objection that I've seen come up in the boards over and
Mhm.
over and over again. This idea that if you believe that Mackenzie Shirilla was wrongly convicted, then that means you have no empathy or care for the families of these two victims, and
Mhm.
nothing could be farther from the truth. Nothing
Yeah.
could be farther from the truth. This was a terrible tragedy, and two young men are dead. And
Mhm.
to me, that tragedy is horrible enough.
Mhm.
Now
I
let's take a wrongful conviction and add it on top of that. That doesn't make it better. It makes it worse.
Right. I've seen the video of Christine Russo being notified by police of her son's death.
Provides
It
heart
is it
heart
is
wrenching.
absolutely heartbreaking, and I feel so bad for her. I really do. She lost her son. Um, the Flanagans, they lost their son. You have my utmost condolences
And prayers.
and yes, and prayers. And but two wrongs do not make a right, as far as I'm concerned. When it comes to Mackenzie, you know, being put into prison when there's not enough evidence, you know, from a standpoint of reasonable doubt. There is a lot of reasonable doubt here. One of it is, of course, her medical issues. Now, do I think that if she was let out today, should she be allowed to drive? Absolutely not. If she was allowed to drive, there's going to be some things I will insist upon. I think you would be, you know, with me here, and that is one, she has a complete neurological and cardiac and physiological checkup and study for at least 6 months by trained doctors or
I
whatever
don't I
requirements
don't
there
have
would
any
be.
problem. I don't have any
you know,
problem with taking the extreme step and saying, "Let Mackenzie, it's just too much of a risk. We
yeah,
cannot ever let you get behind the wheel of a vehicle again. There's just too much risk here." I don't
and
have
and that
any problem with that.
and that would be fine with me too, because but you know, if you were going to give her a chance, I wanted to make damn sure, and seizure free for
Yeah.
over a year. There are people who are epileptic who still are able to drive, but they are a very, very, very strict set of circumstances before they can even get behind the wheel of a riding lawnmower, let alone a car. So but yeah, do I think she should drive right now? Absolutely not. Um, and like I said, she was diagnosed with this condition before she was even driving. We don't even know if her doctor even brought that up. Like, okay, Mackenzie, now that you're driving, you got to be more careful. You got to be aware. We don't know if those conversations even took place. Um, it's just one of those things of, like I said, reasonable doubt. It exists. So all we can do is wait and see as far as the next steps and what goes on then.
What is your sense of ultimate outcome? Do you believe that Mackenzie will eventually be exonerated?
I
In your
believe she
heart,
will
what
be.
is your
My heart says that she will eventually be exonerated. When and how, I don't have those details, obviously. But in my heart, I do believe that eventually there will be a common sense review of all this data by someone who will be like, wait a minute, this isn't right. Something, and we need to correct it. That type of thing is what will take
now
place.
that could to me that could come in two ways. That could come in she's granted a new trial. And
Mhm.
I'll say this right now. She's granted a new trial and it's a jury trial is a slam dunk.
Mhm.
It to me it's an absolute slam dunk. There is no way a jury of 12 men and women convict on the evidence that they have. There's no possibility that you're going to get 12 people that are going to agree that there's enough here for a murder conviction. That's number one.
Mhm.
Possibility number two is that you get the governor or someone like that to step in and say, okay, you know what, this was a wrongful conviction. We're
Mhm.
going to do a pardon or a commutation of sentence or something like that. Do you
Yeah.
think that that's a reasonable avenue?
Um, I know that the state of Ohio has that system set into play as far as who is recommended for some kind of pardon or governor intervention, like you mentioned. Um, what that entails, I know, is fairly detailed, so I don't think that's a high probability or high chance. Um, it might come down even to a potential federal court ruling too. That it might, if it goes to, say, she loses this state appeal, it could be appealed to a federal court, and they might look at it and say, yeah, there might have been a due process issue or something like that, where they would order it back and order a retrial that way of some kind.
Well, I think
So,
the judicial and prosecutorial misconduct that you talked about
mhm,
certainly is an avenue there.
yes,
That she was denied her equal protection rights. Just before I let you go,
yes.
how are the parents doing, and have you been in contact with them?
So I'm in contact with them on a very limited basis. So I will keep um, my comments brief because of the conversations I've had with them. I want to keep private and personal. I know that they are very overwhelmed. Obviously, they are very concerned about their daughter, and um, they just really appreciate the support from people like you, like me, and other supporters. So I won't divulge anything more than that, other than.
Well, if you get an opportunity to speak with them again, extend them my thoughts and prayers, and the thoughts and prayers of everyone involved in the four persons is pretty much on board with me. Everyone
Mhm.
that's looked at every single person that I know that's looked at this has said, "No, wait a minute, this is not right. This
Yeah,
is they don't." So, if you would, if you do speak to them again, extend to them our thoughts and prayers, and that we'll support them in any way we can.
I know that they would appreciate all the help from everyone involved. I don't want to pretend to speak for them on their behalf. Obviously, I don't want to take words out of their mouth, but they're very overwhelmed, and I think that's a very reasonable expectation.
Anybody would be in the
Um,
situation that they're in.
exactly.
Yeah.
So um, I don't want to say any more other than that, but
Yeah.
so
Well, I mean, it sounds like things are at least, moving forward. The process of things are at least moving forward, and hopefully there will be a new trial, and she will be exonerated, because this is one of the most egregiously bad
mhm,
verdicts I think I've ever seen in all my years on this planet. And like I said, I started off thinking that, well, I don't know, but they didn't prove their case. But now, more and more and more,
mhm.
this looks like a tragic accident to me. This definitely looks like a tragic accident, and not anything that Mackenzie or anyone else intended to happen. Well, God bless you. I appreciate you for coming on again.
Well,
And
I appreciate the opportunity, John, and everyone at your organization for everything that you guys do. And so, yeah, uh, I, I, I constantly am an advocate for Mackenzie. I try to speak about her case to anyone who's willing to listen. I've had people who don't want to listen, and
that's
They
unfortunate.
they politely tell me what they think of my opinion in a very impolite way.
Yeah, and
So,
that's unfortunate.
yeah.
When people are like, why are you advocating for that horrible person who killed those two people? Well,
Mhm.
we don't quite see it that black and white. We don't see, we see you are entitled to your opinion, and you may believe that she did this, but we don't. Real quick before you go, give your.
Yep.
I know you're involved in a group that's doing a lot of good work, so give them a plug real quick.
So I'm part of uh, a support page, and that's the Free Mackenzie Shirilla Facebook group. And they are supporters. That's where we obtain and post a lot of the. I don't say we. I shouldn't speak on their behalf. I'm not an admin, but that's where the admins post a lot of relevant data to Mackenzie's case. That's where I was able to obtain the text message documents that were shown in a previous broadcast. And so, yeah, that's where everything supporting her is coming from.
Make
Um,
sure you can feel free to share this broadcast with them or with anyone else who might benefit from it. And again, thank you for coming on, Eric. God bless you, and then Happy New Year.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. And Happy New Year to you too.
Get some sleep. I know you must
Def-
be tired.
Definitely will.
All
So,
right, bye.
bye.